Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer joins me today to unpack the latest in the mining industry. Welcome, Martin.
Hi, Session.
Now, Goldfields says its application for a 40 megawatt solar power plant at South Deep is making progress.
Yeah, well, we're glad it's making progress because they put that application in ages ago. And during that period, they've already built a 23 megawatt power station or power plant, a renewable power plant in Australia at Agnew. So we could have had that already, which would have been important. We've had load shedding, we've had all sorts of issues. We also need clean energy. But absolute delays, inexplicable delays, have just held this back. And the approval still isn't through. Hopefully it'll be by the end of the year that they get that 40 megawatt, but there could be so much more done already. The fact that we in South Africa are already looking at not only just battery technology, so the excess, that you produce from the sun during the day, not that there's going to be excess immediately there, could be stored and used. And if there's a cleverer way to do it is actually to store hydrogen, because then you can introduce the mobility as well. So those are the sort of things we could already be leading the world with if it wasn't for NERSA and these unbelievable, inexplicable delays. So hopefully this 40 megawatt will come through, and we're talking about Western Gauteng. It's down in Carltonville area there. South Deep is a very big mine. It's a mechanized mine. It's a very impressive mine, but it's an underground mine. And you don't normally have mechanized mines underground. So a lot of skills had to be developed. So it's been a situation that it hasn't always performed in the way that people wanted. But Goldfields has got many other operations, gold operations around the world. They've got in Ghana, they've got in Australia, they've got in South America, and they've been able to do quite well during this period. And now you can see that with the new gold price, South Deep is starting to come into its own. This is going to be a 50-year to 100-year mine. This is going to be there for a long time. The gold asset there is huge. And the more they can be encouraged to actually lower their costs and bring in clean energy and do all the modern things because they're already mechanized, the better for South Africa. And whoever is delaying this is delaying good flow of benefits to the South African people. And who are these delayers? They must get out the way now. Let's have this energy that we can produce from private sector companies that can just do good and can just help the whole grid situation. They will obviously have to depend on the grid at night. I mean, this is only going to give them 23% or 25% of what they need. But if they had been given approval ages ago, we'd have probably found they would have stepped it up by now, because when you talk to Goldfields, they say they do believe there's going to be a big step up for their whole group in renewable energies. And you can see what they're doing at Solares Norte in Chile. They're going to have a massive big renewable energy situation there. So people have held us back, and it's not right for the people of South Africa, and they must really put their heads down and get this through soon.
And tell us about Cabinet approving the export tax on chrome ore.
Now, this is a thing that has been coming up since 2012. This is another thing that annoys me, because the threat to these ferrochrome producers has been signaled since 2012, 2013, 2014. They've been saying the Eskom tariff is going to really reduce our market share. Now we, as we have a national patrimony. It's called chrome. We've got enormous resources of chrome. But what we did is we created ferrochrome because part of the government's policy is to beneficiate. So you add value. Now, for every 1,000 tons of ferrochrome that you produce, you employ more than 17 people. For every ton of chrome that you just export, you only employ 5 people. So what are they doing? The people running this economy have got to now really say, we've got to do the best for the South African people. We've got national patrimonies. Now let's use them to the best of our ability. What has happened is that they've now had to impose this tax, which I agree with, because it's like an emergency measure. You've got a new big player in ferrochrome, China. But what chrome are they using? They're using South African chrome. And I don't think the Chinese are going to object. They can see the situation that, we're desperate for jobs. We're desperate to add value to our national patrimony. We need to be exporting more ferrochrome. But in the meantime, we need to put a tax on the chrome going out to discourage, it going out in that form. We should have done it a long time ago. They were asked many years ago. There were previous ministers of mineral resources who didn't want to do this. But we need to sit down now and say, okay, the ferrochrome business, they must make sure they're very efficient when it comes to the use of energy. They must put in their own energy situations. They must use all their gases to generate energy. They must do everything they can. But you can't have them closing down now. So you've got to take an immediate measure, slap that tax on. That tax is going to come straight to the government. It must work with that tax to make sure that we can get our national patrimonies going. And we must say, look, this is not ideal. I would say that I'm 100% behind this tax, but it should have a sunset clause. It is an emergency measure here. Let them use it as an emergency measure and re-look at it later. But what we should be doing, we should regain our strength in ferrochrome, which is so essential for stainless steel. Stainless steel is a great metal. Nobody's saying that the world market for stainless steel and the world market for ferrochrome is bad. It's good, but we're losing our grip on it. Because what we're doing is just sending out the ferrochrome, even though we've got massive facilities and smelters and everything else, to turn that to something that can give 400% more value to our GDP. We're just letting it flow out with low value. And I can remember when this initially happened, the person who started doing this wasn't a South African. He had come in here and he was a new player, and he decided he was going to let that chrome go out. And as a journalist, we found him and said, why are you doing this? And he said, well, I'm battling to sell the ferrochrome, so this is an easy way. And of course, that went against this whole idea that we had added value. We had put everything in. We'd paid for everything. We're even cleaning up the atmosphere, making sure we cleaner. And they said, oh, well, it's not the right thing to do to put tax on. But when you look at Canada, Saskatchewan, how does that get away with single channel marketing of potash for so many years? Nobody says a word. They don't have the unemployment problem that we have in South Africa. They don't have all this need to grow the economy. Yet no one complains about what the Canadians are doing with potash, going into a single channel, which is really a cartel. That's all you can call it. We're just trying to struggle to keep these things going by slapping on a bit of a tax as an emergency measure. And the world must understand this. And they mustn't start complaining. But I would say they must review it at some stage when things get much better.
And lastly, coal mine disposal seems to be exacerbating CO2 emissions.
Now, this was a point raised by Ivan Glasenberg at the Financial Times Commodities. It was a virtual event. And I think it's indisputable. His argument was indisputable. Because what he was saying is that, his competitors are taking their coal mines and they're disposing of them. And they're disposing of them to other players who haven't said, hey, we're going to decline in this. If they're buying this coal, they're going to want to grow it, of course. So how are you helping climate change? How are you helping the Paris Agreement? Whereas Glencore is saying, we've got this coal. We've capped it at 150 million tons, but we're even well below that, and we are depleting all our mines. As we deplete them, we've put some on care and maintenance already, and we're depleting ours in South Africa. We're not going to look for any more coal or try and open up new mines or anything. The existing ones, we're just going to deplete. He says, that helps the Paris Agreement. Whereas if you just sell these off to companies that are not listed, a lot of them, they go into the private sector, you're not even going to know what's happening because you're not going to get that information. Whereas if we, as major investors, everyone's eyes are on us, and we're saying we're going to deplete, that is doing good. So, he's going to try and put this into his Scope 3 emissions and claim a 30% reduction in Scope 3 emissions. Those are what he's saying is that I sell my coal and the power stations burn it and they put that into there, but I'm selling less coal. So I'm coming down. So I think that you couldn't argue against him. I think he's got the right approach. He's coming down on it as quickly as he can. And, as the market changes, he might have to come down even faster than people imagine. So I think that that is something we should consider here. that majors, big majors, have just, oh, we're disposing of our coal. Who are they disposing it to? I mean, Anglo American has done a good job of disposing it in a very responsible way, and not just doing it as a whim, but allowing this to make sure that you don't have your buyer that's exacerbating the situation. It's in a decline, this whole industry. And it needs to be because of climate change and the Paris Agreement and everything we've done. Whereas if you just sell into the private sector and you don't know what's happening, how can you say the Paris Agreement is being upheld?
Thanks for speaking at this,
It's a great pleasure, Sashni.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on the local and global mining industries. And don't forget to listen to the audio version of our Mining Weekly daily email newsletter.